So welcome to another episode of Soft Talk, where unlike BBC's Hard Talk, the interviewees won't find it hard to talk. So today we're very happy to be joined by Mr. Allan Wong, who is a LegCo candidate, and he currently works in the environmental protection field. He's also the chairman of the Hong Kong SPA, which is an organization that advocates for waste reduction in relation to plastics. And he's also a member of the Council for Sustainable Development. So Mr. Wong, welcome to Keybros.
Thanks for coming.
Could you introduce a bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm having a small company for recycling company, mostly target on waste plastic and waste paper. I started my career in 2005 in Guangzhou when I helped my family, and when in 2013 I come back to Hong Kong and start my own company. But I find out there's a lack of public policy. So that the business for recycling is really hard, and the environmental protection in Hong Kong is really bad too. So therefore, I start studying what is the reason is because of the politics. So after that, I joined POD, and I start studying in their political course, and I ran in the 2019 district election, but I failed. And I study in the Beijing Tsinghua University for the Master of Public Administration.
So I think we'll first start off by talking about your participation in this year's LegCo elections. In your Facebook post, you said that you place an emphasis on rationality and making constructive criticisms of government policies. Do you think you'll be playing the role of a loyal opposition? Do you think you'll be part of the governing body? Like, what is your mentality or attitude towards your work in LegCo?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think rationale that you brought up is really important for any policy formulation. And also we have the problem solver. We have to balance all the interests in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is really diversified, and a lot of people interest has to be taken care of. But you can see in the past, in the Legislative Council, some of the legislators can hold up their own small interest group, and then they will affect the whole pictures. I mean, the whole policy can be dragged down. So this is the situation that we don't want to happen again.
From your Facebook post, you've mentioned that you believe the LegCo requires a new wave of candidates who are slightly different from those who currently participate in politics. What differentiates you from other candidates?
Yes, I think I want to enrich the Legislative Council by using my personal background. And when you read the profile of all the candidates, I think none of them are coming from the environmental protection or even from recycle field. I think I using my expertise, I can make sure the MSW charge bills can go smoothly, and then I also help regulating the single-use plastic. All of these key elements can help reducing the landfill in Hong Kong, because we are landfilling more than 10,000 metric tons of waste in Hong Kong, and we have used a lot of land for landfill. Instead, we don't have enough land for our citizens for housing purpose. I will bring up some problems that have been neglected by the administration. The Hong Kong government planning is only solely for the Hong Kong economic reason. They have little consideration of the Hong Kong people's happiness. Northeast, the new territory Northeast, we have 2 million people moving in. So what is the impact for the Northeast of new territories? I think we really need to bring the people voice into the council, for example.
That's very interesting, because these policy issues that you just brought up aren't usually heard in the mainstream media. There's a lot of focus, especially in recent years, given the political troubles we've had on matters such as electoral laws or relationship with the Mainland and so on and so forth. There's very little focus or emphasis on actual policy issues that impact citizens on a daily basis. So would you agree that in LegCo, at least over the past decade or so, there has been too much of a focus on politics instead of contributing to policies that actually help people? And is that something that you're looking to change?
Yes, I do agree, because this is maybe one of the reasons that the system changed right now, the voting system and the nomination system. because in the past you can see there are many seats in one district, right? So people can get elected by certain group of interest less amount of voters, then you can get elected. So I would say it's populism. Populism. So this is hurting the system because just like the policy in 2016 get dragged down by one legislative council, because so that's why I do agree with you that the new legislative council has to be constructive. Otherwise, Hong Kong people still unhappy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So now let's dig a bit deeper into your campaign. So obviously in your campaign, if I'm not mistaken, you're a candidate before, right?
Yes.
Have you found it hard to secure the support of constituents because of your position as some sort of like middle ground party, if I'm correct in characterizing third way party,
yes.
Right?
In Europe, in French, and even in UK before, it happens again because when two extremes go so both ways, so to
Very
extreme,
polarized. Right?
yeah, polarized. So sometimes you need the third way, and people get sick of it. And I think right now the political atmosphere is not quite hot. I think maybe this is some of the chance for people to reconsider or rethink our position. And people may want to find someone who can represent him to do the actual things, like the problem solver. So I think maybe it's a risk or maybe it's an opportunity.
So let's turn a bit onto the problems that face Hong Kong young people in general. So, and Hong Kong young people are, I'd say, a lot of them are feeling lost, maybe feeling hopeless, feeling very much, bogged down, dragged down by the lack of social economic opportunities, the lack of social mobility. So what do you think is the fundamental problem facing Hong Kong young people right now? And what sort of policy should we implement to assist young people and set them in good stead for their future lives?
When Miss Carrie Lam talked about 三業三政, the academic and then career, the political things, I think we first have to focus on we have to complete the promise that we make to them. And then secondly is reactivate, we decorate a lot of industrial buildings that we target for the youth. The young people can go in there to have a cheaper rent, and then they can start their own creative industrial. Even for the technology, if they have new idea, I think we have to focus for them. For the politicals, I think we need to give them a channel. I think Ms. Carrie Lam has given a very nice gesture by having every council to have an age under 35 to join the council. I think we need more.
We can agree that there has been a disconnect between the government or people in positions of power with local citizens, but especially young people. There simply has been a failure for both sides to communicate on a meaningful basis. Given the current reforms to the electoral laws, do you think it is still possible to build bridges between the young people and the government?
Yeah, this is the intention of building bridges. When you say the legislative councillor, right now a lot of them will be pro-government. They do a lot of courses or even on social media, a lot of KOL, but I think it's not collecting because most of their main audience are the teenagers, the blue side. So I think we need some people who can go in the street and don't afraid to talk to the people maybe from the yellow side. Yeah. So that's why you need the legislative council councillor who can the spectrum is all over. Right now, my district is quite yellow and a lot of youngsters, they're silent. They are really silent. But actually they are not silent here. So you need someone who can open-minded and at least hear their voice, why they are unhappy. Then you have to say some more and say in the legislative council, at least someone who can speak for them. Now, if all the legislative councillors stay just focus on the blue side, you never have a bridge on that. So this is my main point. For example, I'm the only one on the street always going to the Daipo Station tunnel. I show up myself, I speed up. Some youngsters say no, even give me the finger. I want to touch them. I want to make them feel I'm here to listen. And I will try to know your position, try to know what you feel, and then I will pass it on. I hope someday we can understand each other.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree with that. I think our channel has always sort of had the same purpose. I personally don't really agree with the blue-yellow dichotomy. I think it's very divisive,
Yes.
and I think fundamentally, blue and yellow are they're political terms, right? But I think what Hong Kong needs right now is less politicking,
Yes.
but more actual policies, more deliberation, actual policies that help people and help youngsters. And I think many youngsters have grievances in terms of socioeconomic conditions, but to some extent they're kind of led astray by political ideals. Maybe some are sort of more radical than others. But ultimately, what we all want is a better future for Hong Kong and a more prosperous future for our young people. So speaking of that, and going back to what you've talked about, providing them with more opportunities to start their own businesses, to engage in creative industry, and so on. I want to draw your attention to our relationship with the mainland, because obviously through the Greater Bay Area schemes, there have been multiple schemes for young people to go work there. Do you think young people should actively seek more opportunities in the Greater Bay Area?
Yes, this is what I did in 2005 when I was like 25, and I saw the opportunity in GBA, and I stayed in Guangzhou for 8 years. This really enriched my experience, because under one country, two system for the youngster, even though if you agree or not, you need to learn what is your own positions. If you don't think they're good, then you come back and see yourself. You make your own judgment. If you only stay in Hong Kong or one district, and then you make comments based on you never travel to them, then it's not fair. Go to Western country and go to GBA, compare. When living cost is a lot cheaper than Hong Kong, you can be more happier. As far as I know, before 2019, a lot of youngsters go back to Shenzhen. I mean, to have fun, to eat or something, but not work. I hope after 2 or 3 years, if they think they need some new opportunities, I think GBA may be one of the options they can do.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, because I think on a personal level, I can sort of share my experience with going to the mainland. I was really shocked by the difference between how the Hong Kong media portrays them and how the actual situation is like. I went to a rather inland province, Henan. Henan is obviously not one of the more developed provinces. Even in terms of cleanliness or hygiene on the streets, I think that's up to a very high standard. And I see a fundamental difference between how mainland young people sort of attitude they have towards life. I think it's a lot more positive than many Hong Kong young people. But I think fundamentally, again, it goes back to the political issue, which is that many people have a sort of mistrust or even some sense of hatred towards the mainland. People should go and have a look. Having studied in the UK for 5 years, I've also been to like France, Germany, Austria, like Switzerland. I've been to the US. I've been to many places, and I've compared them in my own mind. The West is not what people idealize it as, and mainland is definitely not as bad as some people think. But I want to dig a bit deeper into a relationship with the mainland. Obviously, in the past few years with the electoral reforms and with the national security law, do you think one country, two system is still a sustainable framework? Or do you think it has already fundamentally shifted towards something that is different from what it was intended to be?
Yes, I think it's sustainable. Because for the yellow side, they only talk about two systems, never talk about one country.
Yep.
And then for the blue, they only talk about one country, seldom talk about two systems. Two system uniqueness is the key of success in Hong Kong. When we talk about the third way, I would say we are the one who always talk about one country, two system. So that's why when we talk about one country, people think we are blue. When we talk about two system, people think we are yellow. But I think this is the main emphasis or the main essence of Hong Kong right now. People should know what we are right now. We are one country, two systems. And Mr. Deng Xiaoping, he promised if we do any damage or cannot sustain this one country, two system thing until 50 years, then we fail the whole country, fail the history. So what we are doing right now is to do our utmost to protect, to sustain, to make it smooth for the one country system. Everyone has the responsibility, not only in Hong Kong, but the whole country. So I think it's sustainable, and we will have a good example, as I said, historical example that write into history.
Right. Would you like to see it continue beyond 2047? Obviously in the media, a lot of people say, 2047 is some sort of deadline. It's going to be, the apocalypse. It's going to be the end of the world. Hong Kong is going to be another mainland city. I personally don't believe that, but what is your view, or what is a Path of Democracy's view on 2047? And obviously we're kind of sort of like in the middle period. So some people would argue that, over the past few years, it has sort of transitioned from one country, two systems, to sort of like one country, 1.5 systems. You know what I mean? Do you think it will continually shift towards, having more of a convergence between the mainland system and the Hong Kong system? Or do you think the past few years has already made the necessary transformations for one country, two systems to sustain itself?
Our POD's opinion is extend the one country, two system after 2047. We need to make sure this system works successful. And I don't agree it's a conversion to 1.5. We are doing what the basic law told us. For example, the 23 article, or even for the 45 article, universal suffrage. A lot of issues are written on the basic law. So people argue if we should have the 24 article 3 passed first now, or the universal suffrage. The yellow side, like the DP, the Democratic Party, they ask every candidate that you should have universal suffrage before the Article 23. I think we have the obligation to make sure the basic law has been obligated. So we cannot fool the Hong Kong people, say, we have to break the Article 43, people can nominate anyone to be elected to be the candidate of the CE. This is a lie. It's a lie. So we need to give the true message, the real situation to Hong Kong people. So I think we are not going to one country, 1.5 two system. We're just telling what is one country, two system to the Hong Kong people.
Perhaps because of the prevalence of certain media outlets, that a lot of them have political leanings or even radical political views, maybe from the national security law, and even going back to the extradition bill. It's very easy for them to cherry pick certain provisions and say, oh, this law is terrible, it's draconian, or they'll look at a basic law and pick up certain provisions and say, oh, we ought to have these freedoms, we ought to have these rights, but at the same time they ignore other articles in the basic law that they don't like, right? For example, like the promise to have universal suffrage in the basic law has equal footing and is on an equal level with our obligation to implement Article 23. They're both articles in the basic law, and we should respect them in an equal way. Many people will argue that with the current changing system and with the current relationship we have with the central government, it's simply impossible for the central government to make further reforms in that regard. So I have two questions for you in this aspect. First of all is, do you think Hong Kong should still strive towards having universal suffrage?
Yes.
And the second question is, do you think it's possible?
First, yes. Second, is possible, always possible. But we have three steps to make. First of all, people should recognize there's a country framework. We need to have country. If you don't accept the country framework, then there's no demo, not freedom, that nothing universal suffrage to talk about. You need to. It's the first one. The second one is we need to have a basic law to obligate. The third one is people should have not polarize. Otherwise, it will be populism. The people elected will just tell what people want to hear, but they don't never tell what people should hear. Yeah, I think three of them has to be fulfilled.
Okay. So thank you very much, Allan, for coming on to Keybros. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. So best of luck in your campaign, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.